I want to talk a little bit about a couple of things. First thing I'm going to mention is that this administration is the most corrupted administration I have ever bear witness to in my 45 years of living. This is the most corrupted I've ever seen. That being said, I want to talk about the Epstein file for just 1 minute, because it's obvious to me that it's a blatant cover-up. Because here's the thing, on Fox News, back during the campaign, Donald Trump was just point blank: do you think the Epstein files should be released, and will you release it? His response was, yes, I don't see why not, we'll have to take a look at it. That was back during the campaign. Then he's saying publicly to the media, Pam Bondi has the list. She can release whatever she feels is credible. She will release. That went to it. No, it doesn't exist. That went to it was written. It was a list that was created by Obama, Hillary, Joe Biden, Brennan, James Comey. And then it went to, it's a Democratic hoax. And then it went to, begging everybody to please stop talking about it. To which Fox News happily obliged. And then went on to mention Joe Biden in one segment about 152 times. And then it went back to, it's a complete hoax made up by the Democrats. Okay, fine. But you have to understand two things, a couple of things. And one is, Jeffrey Epstein was already being investigated under the Bush administration. Okay? Nothing to do with the Democrats. George Bush was a Republican. Okay? If there is no Epstein list, how do you explain Jeffrey Epstein, in jail, Ghislaine Maxwell in jail, who will not testify because she's hoping that Donald Trump pardons her? Also, for someone, if you're not guilty, then release the files and let the chips fall where they may. But the more you keep telling people to shut up about it, the more you start making up stories about it, the more people are going to question about it and want their release done. Otherwise, why would you keep pushing people not to talk about it? What are you afraid of? What are you hiding? And if it doesn't exist, how can you tell people to stop talking about something that doesn't exist? If it doesn't exist, how can you say it was written by Obama, Joe Biden, if it doesn't exist? You tell so many lies, you don't know which is what the truth is anymore. You're so warped from reality that you've created this whole facade. But in 1982, the New York Magazine did a profile on Donald Trump where he's quoted as saying, Jeffrey Epstein and I are the closest of friends. Flash forward to a couple of years later, where Jeffrey Epstein is heard on an audio saying, I have never had a close friend as I have with Donald Trump. And then you have videos and pictures of Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein together. So, as I said, if you're not in the list, then what are you afraid of? Let it release it and let the chips fall where they may. But the more you create alternate versions of a story, and the more you tell people to not talk about it, makes more and more people question it. And when your next story after the ones you told are, I don't understand why people are fascinated with this. Well, you just said it didn't exist, right? Then you said it was a Democratic hoax, right? Then you said it was written by Democrats, right? Now you're saying you don't and then you said you would release it because you said people have a right to know about it, right? Now you're saying you don't understand why people are so fascinated by it and telling Republicans that they're stupid if they keep talking about it. Okay. No politician has ever called anybody stupid, at least publicly. No leader has ever told somebody publicly, you're stupid because they're talking about something that you don't want them to talk about. So, by trying to cover it up, you're just fanning the flames and telling people, and letting people know, I am guilty, but I don't want to be implicated. And the thing is that if Democrats weren't in charge of the House, that list would have been released already. And by the way, your own constituents, your own party is telling you to release the documents, to release the list. And you're telling them they are stupid. What leader berates people because because they are talking about something you don't want them to talk about? So, by you keep bringing it up, you're implying that you're guilty, but you don't want people to know that. But then again, who are you protecting on that list that you don't want to be out? There are friends of yours on that list that are child molesters, that are child pornographers, and you're protecting your friends? Do you know who's on that list and you don't want it out because you don't want to implicate them? You don't want them to... If you're innocent, then release it. If you truly don't know who's on that list, then why are you hiding from it? Then why can't it be released? But telling multiple stories just proves that you're lying and you have no grip on reality whatsoever. But when your base starts turning on you because they want you to release the list, and you're calling them stupid and you don't need them, okay. And if you don't understand why people want this released, then who truly is the stupid one? Who really is the stupid one? And now we have another thing. Emil Bovai was the lawyer, one of the lawyers during Trump's New York hearing where he was found guilty and branded a convicted felon. Now, thanks to some whistleblowers who got fired, have revealed that he's been telling everybody, defy the courts. We don't give a damn what the courts say. We're going to do whatever we have to do because our boss told us to. But, like doctors, lawyers are sworn to take an oath. And like doctors, if a lawyer breaks that oath, then are they not an ethical lawyer? Then should they not be practicing law? Because their oath is to uphold the law, to have ethics. And once you don't have that anymore, you are no longer a lawyer. You're a lino, a lawyer in name only. And so, Donald Trump has a way around getting past the courts. Since he thinks he's above the law, he nominated Emil Bovai to become the judge in the Second Appeals Court, which is one step away from the Supreme Court. And as expected, every single Republican advanced him to get confirmed, and every single Democrat walked out in protest. former DOJ employees, former judges are sending a letter to the Senate to warn them what can happen should he be confirmed, and saying, if you confirm him, you can kiss the rule of law goodbye. Because here's the thing: once he gets confirmed, if he gets confirmed to the Second Appeals Court, that's one step away from being a Supreme Court judge. So their scheme is to confirm him to the Second Appeals Court, and then either force Clarence Thomas or Samuel Alito into retirement so that Donald Trump can nominate Bovee as a Supreme Court judge. And therefore, everything that Donald Trump wants to do, well, if I could say, hey, he's the president, let him do it. Which means no more Constitution. He can vote, he can run for a third term. And the Democrats walked out and protest because they have morals and they have ethics. No matter what Donald Trump is telling you about Democrats being evil. But Democrats are trying to do the right thing. And if they were running the House and the Senate right now, if they had control of the House and the Senate, you would know. By now, Donald Trump would have been impeached. No question in my mind. He would have been impeached, and this time would have stuck. Although J.D. Vance is likely worse than Donald Trump, but that's neither here nor there. And with the immigration thing, it's just really getting out of hand. And look, I tell people, and people don't want to listen to me, and I'm using the analogy because as a Jew, I can relate to this very much so, that alligator Alcatraz, you can refer to it as alligator Auschwitz because it's exactly what it is. And as a Jew, I can tell you, Jews were deported just as well. Jews were deported by being thrown into cattle cars, trains like cattle, put into camps that were unsanitary. The food is very sparse. You either worked in the camps or you got shot to death. And people say, is Donald Trump ordering people to dig their own graves or shoot people to death? I'm like, not yet. Not yet. But it's going to go there. And when you cut the bill, when you make a bill and cut Medicaid and cut SNAP to put all the funding towards ICE, you're basically letting Donald Trump build his own army with ICE, or as I refer to it now as the Gestapo. Because you have a guy like Stephen Miller, who reminds me of Goebbels, whose quote he's saying is, he's upset because ICE is not deporting that many people a day. And they're not even following the law. Because by law, you need a warrant to arrest someone. You need to read them their rights, and they are required for due process according to the Constitution. And you can argue that, well, they're not really Americans, so they're not entitled to it. And that is actually not true. Because the very first words of the Constitution are, all men are created equal. All men are created equal. Which means we all come from the same skin, from the same cloth. It doesn't matter if you're Hispanic, it doesn't matter if you're Mexican, it doesn't matter if you're American, it doesn't matter if you're black, white. It doesn't matter. We are all entitled to the same process. It doesn't matter. And the fact that you're using laws that aren't relevant, more like the Alien Insurrection Act, a judge said it perfectly. Where's the invasion? Are we at wartime? Because these were laws enacted during the war times, when we needed them. We're not at war, and we don't have any invasion. An invasion would mean a takeover. Where's the takeover? And you're arresting people that either have misdemeanors, no criminal record at all, and in some cases, you're arresting natural-born citizens from this country. Basically, the United States has now entered into the kidnapping business. And when have we gone into the kidnapping business? We're literally kidnapping people off the street. And ICE is wearing masks because they don't want to be identified. Because they know that what they're doing, they know that what they're doing is wrong. But they don't want to get caught because they're cowards. And in some instances, you have a lot of people who are not even ICE. They're just pretending to be ICE. Most of them are probably like Proud Boys who became ICE bounty hunters. Which is why they don't want to show their ID. And by law, you are supposed to show your ID if you're asked to show it. And the fact that they are not showing it is questionable. But also, law enforcement isn't supposed to be laying hands on people and assaulting them in violent ways. If a person is going to work and they're arrested because you suspect because of their skin color, and you suspect that they might be, but you're not checking their credentials. So yes, I'm going to call out the bullshit when I see the bullshit. Because the bullshit that I'm calling out is the fact that you could just assume that everyone is a criminal, even if they were never charged one, and you can just arrest them. Are we going to get to the point now where these immigrants are going to have to wear a star? The version of a star that the Jews wore in the Holocaust during wartime? Because that's where it's going to get to. And the fact that they're proud of this and they want to build more, and they're having conversations with other states that they want to build more of these detention centers, aka concentration camps or detention centers, you have to wonder, why are the Republicans going along with this? Where is their line where they say no more? Where is their moral and ethic code of honor where they finally say enough is enough, you've gone too far, Mr. Trump, or we're going to stop you? And they can't, because this is on them, because they enabled this by allowing Trump to keep doing what he's doing. And Congress says nothing. They've enabled him. When all this could have been prevented, and I blame this on Mike Johnson, who I call Trump's bitch. Because Mike Johnson is the type of person who will go to Trump and say, how high am I jumping today, sir? Which foot am I licking today? Oh, you want me to do what now? Yes, Your Highness. I will do that. And because of Mike Johnson, Congress has basically abdicated all of their responsibilities and basically gave it over to Trump. And they basically surrendered and said, go ahead. And there's a reason why Congress is a legislative branch. There's a reason why it's a separate. No president in history has gone to Congress or the Senate and controlled them and said, vote or else. Say yes or else. There's a reason they are separate governments. There's a reason why Donald Trump wanted Mike Johnson reelected. Because Mike Johnson is his bitch. So he can't say he's a good Christian. Because a good Christian would have morals and ethics. And when he keeps quoting and saying, we're doing everything in the name of God and what God wanted. Really? God's okay with people being treated with no respect? God is okay with people's dignity being taken from them and their humanity being ripped from them? God is okay with kidnapping? Congress has the power. Congress is okay. You're okay with, God is okay with you stealing people's money? Because when Doge eliminated every single one of those agencies that only Congress has the authority to eliminate, God's okay with that? God's okay with taking away insurance from millions of Americans? Starving people? starving kids, God's okay with this? So, excuse me when I say to Mike Johnson, go fuck yourself. Because you can't quote God and say, this is what God wants, and then do what you're doing, because it's the antithesis of that. No. Because if you were a devout Christian, doesn't the Bible say to love each other, to love thy neighbor as I love thyself? So you can't start. So it makes you a hypocrite then, doesn't it? Quoting God and saying, I'm a good Christian. And then saying, nope, sorry. Can't have it both ways. And that's what Republicans are trying to do. And how cruel and heartless do you have to be to rip innocent children's lives, children that aren't even born yet, knowing they're going to be born into a world where they're not safe, where they can't get medical care, they can't get the basic decencies of bread because the parent can't afford it. Because when you're taking away their jobs and you're saying, well, in order to work, just to show you how stupid Congress is, and when you're a congressman or a senator, you're supposed to know the basic laws of this country. The basic, and when you don't know that, how can you be a politician? When you're saying you can work, you can get Medicaid, but if you work, you can get SNAP, but if you work, and you have to work 80 hours a week. Well, here's the thing. First off, the only way to get Medicaid today, or SNAP, is to work. Because you have to prove, when you're certifying for Medicaid or SNAP, they want copies of pay stubs, bank accounts, and things like that. And then they tell you, okay, you've made too much this year, so you're not eligible. Or they're using the pay account saying, this is how much you're going to get on your SNAPs. And you can go 1 year, get the maximum, and 1 year you can get the minimum. It changes every year. And they determine everything, whether you're eligible and how much you're going to get, by pay stubs and bank accounts. So we already have this in place. And I know this because my mom gets it. And she doesn't work, and she can't work. Unfortunately, she can't work. She used to, but she can't anymore. And her income is based off on Social Security checks, which she may or may not get anymore, thanks to the Republicans. And so this is always a requirement. And in Congress, they should know this. They should know this. It is basic. And simple research on the internet could give them all the answers there. So, and not everybody can. And what are people who can't work because they got injured on the job and they legally can't work? And I don't mean that in a bad way. I mean that they have a note that says they cannot work anymore because they had a work injury. This is all because they are afraid to stand up to Trump. And they are part of the cult called MAGA. And they are spineless. Because how is it that Democrats know all this and the Republicans don't? Or that they do know this, but suddenly they're saying, we don't want to piss off Donald Trump. Well, did Donald Trump vote you into office? Are you representing Donald Trump? Or are you remembering, or are you representing the constituents and your state? You know, the people that voted you into office because they trusted you to work for them, to represent them. Right? Because these are the constituents that can vote you out of office. Because they will remember what you've done. They will remember. And when it comes time for the midterm elections, and you lose your seat, you're going to ask, what? You're going to wonder why. You don't work for Donald Trump, and he doesn't work for you. You are voted in by the people in your districts and the people in your state. And you represent them, and you're supposed to do what's in their best interest. And the people who voted on this bill and voted yes, you betrayed every single one of those constituents. You betrayed the state you represented. They trusted you to do a job, and you basically threw them all under the bus in order to please your master, because your political career is more important than children in your state, adults in your state who can't work and who are already struggling to make ends meet. And you basically told them, fuck you. This is what Trump wants, and this is what Trump's going to get. And the sad part about it is that most of you don't even know what's in the bill, and you're still voting for it anyway. And the rule of thumb is always believe the opposite of what a Republican says. Because when they say they're not going to vote for the bill, always know that their no is going to be a yes. Because the Republicans who said they're not voting on this bill because it would be political suicide ended up voting for it. Why? Because Donald Trump made them a promise that he doesn't have any intention of keeping. And how do I know this? Because he broke every single promise he already said he was going to do on the campaign trail. He said on day one he was going to end the war with Ukraine. We still have the war going on. We still have the war going on. He said he was never going to touch Medicaid. That's gone. He said he would never touch SNAP. That's gone. He said Social Security is a necessity that we need. That's gone. And yet, people still believe him. He said, Epstein file, I will release it. And now, 7 versions of a story later, he won't release. He doesn't understand why people are obsessed with it. And yet, people are still enamored by this guy. People still love this guy. And FYI, this is how fascism starts. This is how dictatorships are. They say things when they're on the campaign trail. They tell you things you want to hear, and they promise you this, that, and the other. Then they get into and then you vote them in, and it's like, I never said it. I didn't say it. The other person said it. And people believe it. And when the people who told you, who warned you not to vote, and you didn't listen to them, well, we told you so. We told you so, and you flat out refused to listen. And so you reap what you sow. And so whatever happens to you, I don't feel sorry for you. I really don't. Because he broke promise after promise after promise, and he screwed over every single American. And in the middle of the night, they defunded PBS and NPR, taking away funding for Big Bird, because for some reason they believe that public broadcasting is bad for you. And that they have some sort of secret agenda to brainwash children. Forget the fact that before each program they say programs like this have been made possible by viewers like you, which is true because they do have their monthly campaigns for fundraising. In fact, Seinfeld did an entire episode about it. There was an entire episode of Seinfeld around a PBS campaign where Jerry was and Kramer was doing the phone. So I don't know. Dismantling the Department of Education and having states. I have news for you. States were already setting curriculum and policies to fund the states. The Department of Education was funding all the states. And each state has their own rules. For instance, in the state of New York, you have to have a requirement, have at least 2 hours of secular studies, or risk losing your funding. Or your license. So states were ready. But the fact of the matter is that we're slowly turning into a police state. People don't realize what's going on. And when you're trying to warn them, and they're looking the other way, well, that's exactly why we're in this mess in the first place. Because when you're telling people certain things, and even when you're right, they will not admit it. They will always be in denial. And they don't want to believe the facts. You can tell them whatever you want about Donald Trump. You can tell them whatever you want. They will still call you out. They will still call you out. They will still attack you. And they will still say you have TDS. Or say you hate Trump so bad that you're willing to make anything up. And then when you post the facts, you'll say it's not true. Okay, it's not true. But it will affect you. And when it affects you, are you still going to say that it's not has nothing to do with Trump? People are still blaming Joe Biden for things that Donald Trump is doing. Joe Biden's been out of office for months, living a nice, peaceful life wherever. And that's okay. And if we don't speak up now, and we're not even a year into the presidency, by the way, we're not even a year in, and the damage has already been done. And by the time he's out of office, who knows what he can do even more, to the point where it'd be irreparable. I mean, think about this. He's incinerating 500 pounds of food that should be going to feed hungry people and people that need it. And he's burning the food. And this is the president who's talking about waste and fraud. Well, look no further. You're incinerating food. And that's not waste. That's food that taxpayers have paid for to feed people who need it. You can say goodbye to school lunches because we don't have the funding for it anymore. Now you've got the Department of Education. Where's that funding going to come from? The only thing they're caring about is that student loans get paid off. And because we don't have a Department of Education anymore, we're going to transfer all of those to a department that's not equipped to handle that. Okay, making it worse for people. By taking away school programs. Can't have that anymore. That's got it. Bye-bye. States need to funding it. Where's the money going to come from? So I'm going to end with this and say, this country's collapsing. We are very close, and I hope I'm wrong, but we are very close to becoming a police state of martial law. When you're giving more funding to ICE, and you're building your own army, where you're going to consider ICE the only law enforcement in town. Forget the police. Forget the police. ICE is now the judge, the jury, and the executioner. And ICE could do whatever they want. Forget that. Ask yourself the following question. Do you want Nazi Germany to enter the United States? Which, by the way, it almost did. If it wasn't for the fact that the war was already over by that time. But do you want to be in a state of authoritarianism, fascism, where we're being told what to think, what to read, what to watch, what to do? Do you want our freedoms to be taken away from us? Our rights? which are slowly being ripped from us? Do you want to have our freedom of speech being taken away, that if you speak bad about the leader, you get arrested, which is what happens in authoritarian states? Because Donald Trump is figuring out ways to go around the Constitution. He despises the law. He doesn't want you to speak for yourself. He doesn't want you to think. He wants to control the narrative. He wants you to be able to say what he wants you to say. He wants you to think what he wants you to think. He wants you to believe what he wants you to believe. AKA freedom of press. He hates the press. He wants to take that away. If you say something negative, you'll be branded a traitor. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, gone. Freedom of religion, well, that's almost going to be gone. They want to make English the official language of the United States and punish people if they can't speak English. And I'm telling you right now, we are getting to the point where the United States is not going to be the United States anymore. It's being reshaped with the laws rewritten to what Trump wants it to be. And if Trump wants you to eat poop, we're eating poop. If Trump doesn't want you to read, we're not reading. Remember, Trump said, "I love the uneducated." If there's no education, people are stupid. Remember that. And you know why he wants people, and you know why the Republicans want you to work 80 hours a week or a month? Because it's more money in their pocket. It's called slave labor. If you're working 40 hours a week, that's 80 hours there. But what are the people who can't work full time? What if people can't work full time? They can only work like 25 hours a week. It's easy for people with money to say, work X amount of hours. It's easy for people who don't have jobs, because they have people to do it for them, to say this. But unless you're on the workforce, you have no idea what it's like. Everybody is different. Not everybody could work 40 hours a week. Not everybody could work 25 hours a week either. Not everybody could work. It's not easy to get a job these days. But when people are sick and they can't go to the doctor because they have no insurance, what's going to happen to them? When people can't go to the pharmacy to get their medications, people who are diabetics, and if they don't take their insulin, they're going to die. You know, people who have cancer, and they can't get treated for the cancer. Canada has universal health care. Is it the greatest? I don't know, but they still have it free. Everything has to every action there is a consequence, and the consequences of you taking away people's insurance is that they're going to die. And the fact that Joni Ernest says we're going to die anyway is basically telling her constituents, fuck you. And yes, she's right, we're going to die anyway. But you can live a long and healthy life by taking care of yourself and getting the help you need. And a diabetic without their insulin won't survive. And I speak from personal experience with this. A person who has a contagious disease won't know they're contagious because they can't go to the doctor. Because they have no insurance. And if you have a contagious disease, you'll never know, and you'll go outside getting the next person sick, and so on, and bingo, you got another pandemic. And we can't take vaccines because you have that idiot, Robert Kennedy, in office who says, well, you don't need to take the vaccine because you're not in the age range that we said to take the vaccine. So, oh well. And it doesn't matter if you're anti-vaccine or not, but human decency. So, and if you notice, all these terrible things happen under Trump. The COVID pandemic could have easily been preventable if Trump hadn't fired that board. All I'm saying is our country's headed in a very collapsing direction. We are an embarrassment to this country. We are an embarrassment to the world. The world is laughing at us. They were all happy when Donald Trump left office. And so far, Donald Trump isn't doing anything presidential. Everything he's doing is hateful, cruel, and heartless, and basically getting revenge. And Donald Trump thinks he knows better than the experts when it comes to tariffs and things like this. And the experts have proven that they're correct. And Donald Trump doesn't seem to understand how things work, because the experts have proven that they're right. And Donald Trump is a liar, basically. 90 days, 90 deals, never happened. And when they called him out on it, he said, I'm not ready to announce it yet. But then it was found out that other countries have said, we haven't negotiated any deals with anybody. We haven't negotiated any deals with the United States. Then he started sending letters out to these people. Turns out, as everybody said, the tariffs were illegal, unconstitutional, and therefore the countries don't have to abide by those rules. But Donald Trump keeps thinking he knows better than everybody else, and the tariffs are there. Just remember, promises made, promises broken. And I, as I'm sure other people have done, don't make promises you can't keep. So you say, maybe, I'll try. No promises. But Donald Trump made promises, and they were never kept. And many of us knew this. Because if you know Donald Trump from all these years, from the 80s, 90s, and so on, and you speak with people who've dealt with him in the past, and yet you vote for him anyway and you stand by him no matter what, then you deserve what you get. And I don't feel sorry for you. You reap what you sow, and this is what you reaped. So, we told you so. And until you realize we were all correct, no sympathy. No sympathy. And I'm sorry to be so cool about it, but it's true. We told you so, and now you're dealing with those consequences, whether or not you choose to believe it. But we told you so, and you deserve it. And if nothing else, maybe one day you'll wake up and realize, but until then, we can only hope and pray that this country doesn't become a third world country.